What's happening, everybody? On today's show, a bunch of movement over the weekend in the transfer portal all across the SEC. We'll get you caught up on all the moves. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And shout out to our everydayers. All right, let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Intercepted. Takes the handoff. What a catch.
Around the conference.
And we start over at Arkansas as they are making some moves in the transfer portal. First up, the Razorbacks picked up Keivie Rose, a defensive lineman from Louisiana Tech. He is transferring to Arkansas. He announced his commitment over the weekend, entering his fifth year of college football. Played just one game in 2019, took a redshirt 2020 season, did not count against him. And he comes to Fayetteville, able to play this year and next year. Over the past 3 years, he's played in 34 games, made 32 starts at defensive tackle, recorded 72 tackles, including 9.5 for a loss, 3.5 sacks. He was All-Conference USA honorable mention back in 2021 and had offers from a ton of different schools, including a couple in the SEC like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Mizzou. 6'3", 300 pounds. Keivie Rose coming to Arkansas. Also, right after they announced Rose is coming to Arkansas, another commitment announced. He's heading to Fayetteville. It is AJ Braithwaite Jr., former Western Kentucky defensive back. He had initially committed to FIU, but over the weekend he announced he is heading to Arkansas. He will be a graduate transfer. Spent 5 seasons at Western Kentucky, used a redshirt, and of course had the COVID year. Over his career, he's played in 48 games. Was a 12-game starter in 2021. Last season, he only made 8 appearances due to an injury, including 2 starts, had 17 tackles, including 1 for a loss. But big-time experience there for Sam Pittman and company, adding to their roster. Defensive tackle Keivie Rose and defensive back A.J. Braithwaite. Big-time pickups there for Arkansas, if nothing else, just for depth. Meanwhile, over at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, he's hitting the portal. Former Georgia Tech defensive lineman Akelo Stone announced over the weekend he is transferring to Oxford. Stone spent 3 seasons at Georgia Tech, had 17 tackles, 2 sacks, and 7 tackles for a loss. Appeared in 21 games over 3 seasons. Last year was his best, with 12 of his 17 tackles coming last year. He was the team captain for Georgia Tech's spring game, but entered the portal and made his commitment to Ole Miss. And he will be a welcome addition to that D-line as they're trying to get that defense up to par there at Ole Miss. And big-time pickup there in D-lineman Akelo Stone. Another Ole Miss tidbit, they picked up a commitment recruiting-wise from one of their top targets in the state of Mississippi over the weekend, 3-star cornerback Patrick Broomfield. He is the number 1 corner out of the state of Mississippi, and obviously not a huge star rating, but had a lot of interest from the likes of Oregon and Arkansas, among others. He's the number 67 corner in this class, number 26 player out of the state of Mississippi. So good addition there for Lane Kiffin and crew. Meanwhile, over at Florida, a veteran O-lineman heading to go play for Billy Napier and crew in Gainesville. Former FIU lineman Lyndell Hudson flipped his commitment. He had been committed to South Florida. On Saturday, he tweeted that he will continue his career with the Florida Gators. He entered the portal back in March and had interest from a ton of different schools. His college career began in 2018. Where he redshirted at FAU, made 11 appearances in 2019. For the past 3 seasons, he's been a regular starter at right tackle. Was limited to playing 8 games last year due to a reported back injury, but he is a guy who emerged as a multi-year first-teamer on FIU's O-line, made 38 appearances in games 25 starts. Pro Football Focus credits him with 1,564 career offensive snaps logged, and about over 1,400 of those at right tackle, about 112 at left tackle. So primarily a right tackle guy, 6'7", 320 pounds, rated a 3-star player, the number 52 offensive tackle, and a big addition there for Billy Napier on their O-line, adding some more depth in Lyndell Hudson. We'll see where he lines up. Over at Texas A&M, they added a big play receiving threat to their group over the weekend. Former Grand Valley State wide receiver Jahdae Walker verbally committed to the Aggies. He announced on social media they'll have 3 years to play 2 for the Aggies. They had him listed at 6'4", 185 pounds at Grand Valley State in 11 games. Last year had 30 catches for over 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, as Grand Valley went 12-1 and had a very nice year. His 20.8 yards per catch ranked first among league receivers with at least 10 catches. He's the Aggies' 12th transfer addition so far this offseason and the second at wide receiver. So keep an eye on Jahdae Walker. We'll see what he does for the Aggies next year. Meanwhile, over at South Carolina, Jatius Gear is heading home to South Carolina. He spent 2 seasons at Syracuse. He announced on social media he's heading back home. He's a 3-star, number 13 player in the state of South Carolina from the class of 2021. Made just 1 appearance in Syracuse's 2021 season, took a red shirt that year. This past year played in all 13 games, made 12 starts at defensive end. And a lot of people are saying, South Carolina needed to add some depth to that defensive line. So Geer, Geer, coming back home to South Carolina. This would be Jatius, however you pronounce it. But big addition there for South Carolina through the portal. And 6'6", over 200 pounds, and has several years of eligibility left to go. Over at Kentucky, Mark Stoops' staff hitting the transfer portal. They picked up a couple commitments over the weekend. One from Northern Illinois linebacker Deveron Rayner. He heads to Lexington after 3 seasons at Northern Illinois. And in his career, playing 20 games, had over 126 tackles, 8.5 for a loss, 5.5 sacks, 3 pass breakups this past year. Posted a career high of 71 tackles, 3.5 sacks in just 8 games played. He drew a lot of interest from schools like Florida State, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, and Kentucky was his most recent offer. Rayner is the second former Northern Illinois player to land at Kentucky this offseason. Left tackle Marcus Cox was the big pickup for Kentucky earlier this offseason and expects to be a starter for them. Another piece over the weekend, West Virginia offensive lineman Dylan Ray announced he is heading to Kentucky. He has played 2 seasons at West Virginia, totaled 32 snaps last year, all against FCS Towson in that game. He's originally from Indiana, will have 3 seasons of eligibility remaining, and is Kentucky's second transfer commitment on that O-line this month, in addition to Ohio State offensive lineman Ben Chrisman. So Mark Stoops continuing to add depth to that O-line. And another addition for Kentucky, they picked up Georgia Southern transfer kicker Alex Rayner, guy who made 18 of 20 field goals last year, 49 of 50 extra points. Kentucky had 8 missed field goals, 2 missed PATs last season. So Georgia Southern's primary starter at kicker for the past 3 seasons. Kentucky was looking for a new kicker. Matt Ruffalo departed the season this past year. So Alex Rayner, see if he'll be the full-time kicker for Kentucky. Couple of other notes over at Alabama. Tyler Harrell, he is heading back to the ACC. If you remember that name, he was a wide receiver, started his career at Louisville, and came and spent 1 season with Alabama, just never could get fully healthy. Was supposed to be a guy that was going to have a big breakout year this year at Alabama, but just never really happened after having a nice 2021 season at Louisville. But he is back in the portal, and he is off to Miami. So Tyler Harrell, will see what he does over there with the Miami Hurricanes, but just never worked out for Alabama. Last season, he had just 2 catches for 18 yards. Meanwhile, over at Auburn, TJ Finley who we know has entered the portal, was a guest on our show a couple weeks back. He has announced where he is headed. TJ Finley announced his commitment to Texas State, which means he traded a quarterback competition in Auburn for one with Malik Hornsby, a former Arkansas quarterback. Finley saw his season cut short by a shoulder injury last year, and he had previously transferred from LSU. But now he will head over to Texas State, where his coach at Texas State, ironically, coached at Incarnate Word last year. He coached Lindsey Scott, another former LSU quarterback who had a really, really big season last year on the FCS level. So we'll keep an eye on it. TJ Finley, if he goes to Texas State, starts, and he's the guy, could be very, very productive. And, of course, we will be rooting him on. Few other notes going on around the conference. Recruiting-wise, Jahdae Walker, he's the number one player out of the state of Mississippi, trimmed down his list to 10. He wants to play in the SEC. Five-star linebacker, included 9 teams on his list of schools, including Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama, Auburn, A&M, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. He's also considering Penn State. So 24/7 Sports, really high on him. They've got him rated the number 22 overall player in the class of 2024, the number 5 pass rusher, and the number 1 player out of the state of Mississippi. Kamarion Franklin, he's a defensive lineman, considered the number 1 player in the state, according to 24/7 Sports Composite. But Rebel fans going to want to keep an eye on Jahdae Walker. We'll see as he whittles this list down, but sounds like he's going to be playing the SEC. Just don't know where as of yet. And one more note, Kirby Smart, holding a lot of respect for his former boss in Nick Saban. And appearing on the Feinbaum show a couple days ago, he was asked about Nick Saban. Kirby Smart said, look, Nick has been tremendous for our sport. Nobody has moved the college football game more than he has. He's done a tremendous job of changing the game. The SEC is the premier place, primarily because Nick started bringing national championships there when he came to LSU. So he has done a lot for this game. Of course, a lot of people wondering, can Georgia three-peat this year? And Kirby said, look, we got lucky against Ohio State last year. We got lucky against Mizzou in a game we didn't play very well. In the SEC, it takes a little luck, and you have to have that. But from what I learned from Nick Saban, was how to manage an organization. He's tremendous at that. And look at what he's done for the state of Alabama, the city of Tuscaloosa. Nobody's impacted that state like he has financially and giving back. So Kirby deflecting a lot of stuff. It's not about me. It's about Nick Saban. Give him all the credit. Give him all the love. Look, if Kirby wins a 3rd championship in a row, a lot of more focus is going to come in on Kirby and what he's doing. And not saying we're forgetting about Nick. Look, Nick is still the greatest to ever do it, but certainly a power dynamic shift in the SEC these last couple years. And if Kirby wins a 3rd one, folks in Alabama will be getting restless, to say the least. All right, there you have it. There's the latest going on in the transfer portal. When we come back, we'll hit you with some SEC baseball and softball nuggets, and we'll get to some SEC hoops news in a little bit. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. First up, I want to remind you this episode is presented to you by our friends over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and the calories, you need the best tasting protein bar ever, and that is Built Bar. Built, you got to go try them out. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, Built Bars are the way to go. They taste so amazing. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in some great flavors like peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, churro flavored. They are awesome. And of course, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and packed with protein. 17 grams of protein packed into these bars. You need to go get your hands on a box and try them today. You can find them now at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Or, of course, you can always find them on their website at built.com. That's where you can see all the great, amazing flavors. They're always working on something new. So I encourage you to go to their website and check them out at built.com. And, of course, if you're close to a Sam's Club, you can run in and grab that 13-bar box. Or if you're close to a Walmart, you can go to the pharmacy section and find a 4-bar box there. Built Bar is the product. And, of course, built.com is the website that you need to go check them out. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and figured we would get to a couple of nuggets here. It was a busy weekend in the softball world and baseball world. Of course, the SEC softball concluded the SEC tournament over the weekend. And, of course, the bracket play came out Sunday evening. So we'll get to that in just a second. Baseball will be heading into the final week of regular season play, and then we'll be getting to the SEC tournament over in Hoover here in a couple of just a matter of days really now. But let's jump into it. Some SEC baseball storylines from over the weekend. Number 7, Florida swept number 5, Vandy on senior day. The Gators took sole possession of the SEC East by sweeping the Commodores, winning 6-2 in the final game of that series. Jack Caglione produced his best start in SEC play, tying his career high with 6 2/3 innings pitched, allowed just 1 run. Lefty also tied his personal best with 9 strikeouts. Meanwhile, Wyatt Langford did all the heavy lifting on offense. He had 2 home runs, a double, and 4 RBIs. Played perhaps his last game in Gainesville. So shout out to Jack Caglione and Wyatt Langford. It was a big statement for the Gators. They won 40 games for the 28th time in program history, including the 11th time under Kevin O'Sullivan. And Florida swept Vandy for the 4th time under O'Sullivan, including the first time since 2018. All of those have been done in Gainesville. Meanwhile, red-hot Auburn, they completed a sweep of Ole Miss. 5 hitters collected 3 hits apiece as Auburn banged out 20 overall in a 13-5 win at Ole Miss, finishing off a sweep of the weekend series. In 3 games in Oxford, Auburn outscored Ole Miss 37-11. The 37 runs scored were the most in a series this season and the most in a 3-game span since they scored 51 in the Auburn Regional last year. And the weekend marked Auburn's first SEC Road Series sweep since outscoring Alabama 44-10 in 3 games at Tuscaloosa back in 2018. It also marked the first time Auburn swept Ole Miss in Oxford since clinching the SEC West Division Championship back in 2010. So a lot of awesome stuff happening in the SEC baseball world. How about Mississippi State? You thought they were dead? No. They go into Baton Rouge, take 2 out of 3 against LSU. Sure, they lost the Friday night game against Paul Skeens, like just about everybody does, but they took a little something from Auburn. They slid their pitching back a little bit to games 2 and 3, and LSU got some major questions in that bullpen behind Paul Skeens. Look, we know of, who their Friday night ace is, and guy who's going to be a top 5 pick in the MLB draft. Skeens is awesome, but LSU's pitching has some major questions for a team that was ranked number 1 for much of this year. Shout out to Mississippi State, man. It has not been a good run this year or last year, following that national championship, which seems like forever ago. But what a big series win for those guys to keep hopes alive of some kind of postseason action. So shout out to Mississippi State going into Baton Rouge, taking 2 out of 3 against LSU. Tennessee, they took 2 out of 3 against Kentucky. The Wildcats won on Sunday to avoid the sweep. And Arkansas took 2 out of 3 against South Carolina. Arkansas baseball earned their 3rd straight SEC series win on Sunday. So shout out to them. This weekend, going to be the final weekend of the SEC baseball regular season. Some really good series this weekend, including Arkansas at Vandy, Tennessee at South Carolina, and Florida at Kentucky. All those big, big, big series that have some implications to come here. So we will keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, in SEC softball action, Tennessee left no doubt about their rule over the SEC this year. They took home the SEC tournament title Saturday afternoon with a 3-1 win over South Carolina. The win gave the Lady Vols a sweep of SEC championships after clinching the regular season title. And in Saturday's title game, the 10-seeded Gamecocks, they were chasing history. They were already the first 10-seed or lower to play for the SEC softball championship and struck out for a quick run to the top in the first inning. That early lead evaporated quickly, and Tennessee took advantage. But the SEC, they came out over the weekend with their all-league softball teams. And Skylar Wallace of Florida was selected as the player of the year. Maddie Penta of Auburn was named the pitcher of the year. Carlin Pickens of Tennessee was named freshman of the year. And Karen Weekly of Tennessee was chosen as coach of the year, 3rd time winning that award. Tennessee and Georgia led the way with 4 players each on the first team. Georgia's 6 all SEC picks is the most by the Bulldogs since 2016 when 7 were honored. But congrats to Tennessee softball. What a weekend it was and what a season it was for them. They are not done. And now the postseason is set as we look to the bracket. Basically, everybody that has a softball team in the SEC, so take out Vandy, they don't have one. Everybody except Mississippi State is going to the postseason, and several are national seeds. I know a lot of folks at Auburn were perturbed, thought they maybe got the raw deal as they're going to have to go on the road to Clemson. I know some Auburn fans said they're worried about getting tickets, that Clemson in the past has done a thing where they just sold all the tickets to their fans and didn't allow visiting fans to get many tickets. So we'll keep an eye on that. Again, it stinks for Auburn because they beat Alabama, they beat LSU this year, and, they're not going to be hosting. So unfortunate for Auburn. Florida, they are in the Stanford Regional, so they're going on the road there. Alabama is the 5th overall seed. They'll be playing at home. Kentucky, they are going up to Northwestern, so they're going to travel a little bit. A&M will go out to Austin to play in the Texas Regional, so not a far trip for them. Tennessee, they were the 4th overall seed. They will host the likes of Indiana, Louisville, Northern Kentucky. South Carolina, they will go on the road to Tallahassee to play in the Florida State Regional. Georgia, they come in as the 14 seed. They will host Virginia Tech, Boston University, and North Carolina Central. Arkansas, they're the 11th seed. They get to host teams like Oregon, Notre Dame, and Harvard. And rounding out the rest of the SEC teams, LSU, they're the 10th overall seed. They'll play host to ULL, Omaha, Prairie View. Ole Miss, they will head out to Utah to play in their regional. And I believe that's it. I think that's all the SEC teams. Oklahoma, of course, the number 1 overall seed. They've just been so good when it comes to softball. But keep in mind, them and Texas. Texas is the 13 overall seed as well. They're both coming to the SEC next year. So it's just going to make an even more embarrassment of riches for the SEC. But it's going to make the road that much tougher, man. Can you imagine having that many good softball teams in one league? Somebody's got to lose. Somebody's got to stink. So be interesting to see moving forward. And there you have it. That is the latest in the softball and baseball world. Coming up next, we're going to touch on some SEC hoops transfer portal news as well. That's coming your way in just a second. All right, roll along here, locked on SEC, and before we call it a day, we did have some SEC basketball transfer portal news that we need to jump into because, look, it's the portal is still, or the portal is closed for football, but, there's people still in it, so they're still picking their destinations, and kind of same thing here for basketball. Some guys out there still picking their destinations of where they want to go. So let's jump back into it as we talk a little bit on the basketball court. And we head out to Oxford as Musa Cisse, talented big man from the 2020 recruiting class out of the city of Memphis, was a 5-star prospect, stayed at home, played for Memphis his first season, then transferred to Oklahoma State, where he's played the past 2 years. He re-entered the portal this offseason, and on Sunday, Musa Cisse announced he's going to play for Chris Beard at Ole Miss. This past year, he played in 32 games for Okie State, started 20 of them, averaged close to 7 points, 8 rebounds, and close to 2 blocks per game. So big pickup there for Chris Beard and company over at Ole Miss. Meanwhile, Andrew Taylor, a standout from Marshall, he announced he is transferring to Mississippi State. Big pickup for Chris Jans and company. Andrew Taylor averaged 20 points per game for Marshall last year. Had interest from schools like Auburn, Florida, Kentucky, LSU. And he's played in over 100 games. Was a 4-year starter there at Marshall. Consistently scoring double figures throughout his career. Averaged 10 points per game his freshman year. And then, like we said, increased to 20.2 points per game this past year. 6'3", 185 pounds. Also averages 5 rebounds, 4 assists per game. So big-time player there for Mississippi State, Andrew Taylor. Keep an eye out for him. And lastly, the 2023 NBA draft going to take place in just a couple of weeks. We'll have the draft lottery tomorrow night. Find out what teams are picking high. But the draft will be held on Thursday, June 22nd. And CBS Sports, they did a mock draft to see where all the first-round players will be going, and 5 guys from the SEC falling in their mock draft. And here's how it shaped out. Number 3 overall pick, they have Brandon Miller from Alabama. Number 8 overall pick, they have Anthony Black, the guard from Arkansas. Number 11 overall, Cason Wallace, the guard from Kentucky. Number 19, they've got G.G. Jackson, the forward from South Carolina. And at number 20, it is Nick Smith, the guard from Arkansas. A lot of people thought Nick Smith would go higher than that, but nonetheless, that's what they got projected. 5 guys from the SEC going in the first round in just a couple weeks of the NBA draft. So we'll see if that holds true, if any other guys sneak in there. And still got some guys need to make a decision whether they're going to stay in the draft or pull out, come back. Oscar Tshiebwe is one of those names. And so something to keep an eye on there over these next couple of weeks, because we can have some really, really big names coming back in the SEC next year. So, of course, we'll keep an eye out for that. And that is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day, our everydayers. Tomorrow on the show, we'll catch up with more transfer portal news. We'll also start to look to some more football things as well. Later in this week, we will talk with our buddy Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. Do a little crossover with him, talk about Tennessee's offseason and expectations for next year. And we'll get into a few other teams as well over these next couple weeks. Keep in mind, we'll be at SEC Media Days in a couple weeks, catching up with some players and coaches and the like. So you want to make Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.